I am Anuja, and I teach here in IICD in the soft material department. I have completed my fashion design from NIFT and post-graduation from NID, and um, it's been 8 years since I've been attached to IICD now. So I've seen a lot of batches coming and going and quite interesting experiences. So today we have here two very passionate designers from Delhi, and they are one of those people who have really explored on ground level with the artisans and wonderful work. So I have Richard. Hi, Richard.
Hi.
And Richard Panva he's basically an information technology graduate, and he did his post graduation from NID in apparel design and merchandising, and he interned with one of India's leading fashion designers, Anamika Khanna. And Amit Vijaya.
Hi guys.
Amit is hi. Amit is a science graduate turned to art, ushering a digital graphic design and printing in Kolkata, uh, creating promotional material for his clients and textile and fashion field, inspired him to use textile as a creative output and led him to study textile design. So, from very different backgrounds, both of them have come. One is from information technology, and the other was from graphic design. And finally, they met in NID, of course, different batches, but at the same time. And then they started their journey from there. So, I would like to ask you, Amit and Richard,
Yeah.
how did your journey start in the creative field? And what made you so passionate about it?
So you can go
Mm,
first.
So I think both of us had a creative bent of mind and were interested in creating rather than what do you say?
Normal,
Yeah, rather
nine to
than
five jobs. Yeah.
so we tried at least I tried NID, and I surprisingly and uh, amusingly I got through NID in the first go. So I was like, okay. So once I
That itself is a big achievement.
so once
Yeah.
once I got through, coming from an IT background, I was like, okay, now what? So I think it was the passion of learning something totally different, which was not my field. So, and being having a curious mind and asking questions and taking criticism positively, I think that's some of the points who have made me what I am today, or the creative person I am today. And thanks to Amit, I think he was a little more experienced than me in
Yeah.
professionally uh, as well as personally. So I think
He contributed quite well
yeah,
for your
yeah,
development and everything.
yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. Do you want to share the screens of the PPT where we have the introduction? Swati, can you help us?
Yeah, I'll just start.
It'll be quite interesting to talk with that also. Yeah, Amit, let's start with your beginning.
So basically, I graduated with botany and horticulture, and
Wow.
I was quite interested in that also. But it somehow I didn't want to pursue that further to become a professor. I think the end goals in this country today for that is that you pursue BSc, then do your MSc, and then go and teach in a college or something like that. And that just wasn't my calling. I think when you have the creative bug, even if you don't know whether you're creative or not, if you have it, you'll always be a little uh, dissatisfied with what you're doing, especially if it's a very regular kind of a program. So
Right.
I was still exploring what to do and stuff like that, and I had the good fortune that my father was quite understanding, and I told him, and he had an opportunity to start a digital computer training center for
Okay.
graphics, basically. So since I understood computers, he had asked me to come back and manage it. And
Okay.
managing that led to client servicing and learning softwares myself, learning, understanding graphic design
Mhm.
from
Okay.
some great people in Kolkata in the advertising world and all, and on the job. And there was a lot of client servicing to be done, where understanding of a client and delivering those kind of things. And as I think it's destiny when I look back today, because most, I think 90% of my clients turned out to be people either in the fashion or textile business.
Wow.
And I had the opportunity. Basically, I think what ignited my passion for Indian textiles is I was asked to be the graphic designer for the first Sutra convention that happened.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I think that was way back in 2003, or so, if I'm not mistaken. So
Right.
I got to see all these international scholars and all coming and going crazy and nuts about Indian textiles. And
Mhm.
we, from childhood, look at Indian textiles all around us. Like, it could be
True.
a pillow cover, it could be a curtain, it could be something mothers are wearing. So we're quite
Yeah.
jaded. We live with that. So we don't really acknowledge it in
Mm.
that way. And looking at
Mm.
all these people talking about it and explaining as to what is the history of Indian textiles got me really excited. And that's
Okay.
what led me to apply to NID as a textile designer. And it was my first time. I didn't think I would get through. So I got through also. And
That
that's
was your
where the
destiny.
journey, yeah, that's where the
Yeah.
journey starts.
Okay. And in the next slide, I just saw Richard's comment. So, what is this about, Richard? Motivation not found?
So this is it's the way the Indian society goes, that if you scored well in your 12th standard, so the next step is to do the best thing which is there in the education, I would say, market. So IT
Yeah.
was the booming industry that time. So I did join IT as for graduation. But I think after my graduation, I realized that it is
That's
not something it was just not something that I could do. I could see myself doing at all. So and I had friends in SEP who architecture and all that stuff. So I was
the.
used to keep chatting with them, and I said, this is not something I want to do. Something where I can create, or I can. And fashion was something which was always exciting. Textiles was fashion. Accessories was something which was always exciting. So I gotten this thing that there is NID or NIFT. You can try both, because Ahmedabad had both the options, and
Right.
NIFT was something which wasn't that exciting. So I tried NID, and that's why you can see like error, motivation not found. So
Yeah,
that
quite interesting. It's
like
like motivation not found, let's sleep.
I actually did my 1 year of post graduation also in IT, but I think
Okay.
after that I just once I got through
Yeah.
NID, I just left
You didn't look
everything
back, basically.
behind. Yeah, and if anybody's like Amit still makes fun of me because he still uses computer more than me, and he says, I don't know how did you ever became a graduate in IT. Because there are certain things in like in on computer which I can still not do. So yeah.
Okay. That's okay. So, coming next, so I want to know what really motivated you to come up with a brand like Amrich? What is the philosophy behind it? In NID, when you were there, uh, what really came up to the whole concept? How did you manifest Amrich? And is it like Amrich is Amit and Richard or some other thing also? Like,
So
what does it mean?
basically, the thing is that while we were at NID, and technically our postgraduate course is supposed to be a professional course where people are supposed to come in from professional vocations and they could take that course. And I think for us, it was this slide that you see, Conversations in Color. This is basically a
Yeah.
passion that was ignited in me through my explorations in textiles, which is shibori, which is the Japanese art form of tie and dye. And
Yeah.
we had got together, Richard and me, and just for extra pocket money, we used to do these scarves and sell them at the NID store, Nidis.
Okay.
And it did very well. I mean, when we look back at that time to sell that many scarves, and this used to be something that we used to do, these one of a kind scarves in our free time. We used to just sit and clamp fold. Anybody who knows clamp presses dyeing would understand. It's quite
Yeah.
meditative, folding fabric into geometric forms, resisting them and dyeing them. And
Yeah.
we did that, and we got a chance to basically Lakme had started the Gen Next program, and
Mhm.
our seniors Rahul Mishra and Samar Firdaus had participated, and Deepti Toor,
Yeah.
and the head of apparel Somesh at that time, Mr. Somesh
Mhm.
Singh. We were
Mhm.
just sitting in the apparel studio one day. I think we were sitting and playing video games, if I'm not mistaken. And he called and he said, "Take this form and fill it up." And both of us were like, I told him, I said, "I'm a textile student. I don't know garments that well. So if I have to do this, I need to team up with somebody. And if you don't, I mean, like if Richard is okay with it."
Mhm.
So he said, "Why don't you speak to Lakme whether they'll allow a duo?" We called up Lakme and they said, "Of course, we'd be willing to accept an application for a duo." And we applied. And for us, it was more like a testing ground to see whether, because creative people have massive egos, creative people have their own bent of mind. So to
Right.
see whether we would be able to work together to put out anything which we can do, because we had planned that sometime maybe in the future we'll start a label. And
Mhm.
a lot of textile design students who come to textile design NID somehow have a very home furnishing bent of mind. I was
Yeah.
always pro clothing. So for
Okay.
me, it was textiles for clothing. That was what excited me.
Mhm. I remember
So
you working in the dyeing lab day and
yeah,
night,
and
and you would just experiment. And I still remember those days. And you were experimenting with colors and textures and I don't know what not. I
so
remember.
surface treatments always excited me with textiles. And
Yeah.
we filled up the Gen Next form. We got through. We went and showcased. In the next slide, I think you'll see the collection that we showcased. And we realized that basically Itajime Shibori, which is clamp resist dyeing, is not something which is very production friendly. And
Hmm.
even in Japan, it's now at a level of people who can practice this are considered masters, and
Okay.
it takes years of experience to get your skills right and to be able to manipulate fabric into getting patterns. So we thought it
Right.
would be also challenging for us to see if we can make it production friendly for a Pret line, where each
Okay.
piece is like a couture piece, each is individually made, and each and every one is an individual piece because you can't control the amount of dye that a fabric takes up.
Hmm.
So we did that. We went to Kutch and we wanted to basically pay an homage to indigo. So we went and taught a craftsperson in Kutch how to do shibori for us in case we get production inquiries. And
Okay.
we put out a line of 12 looks, showcased,
Okay.
actually not didn't put out a line, we showcased a line of 12 looks, and it was really well.
This was 2005,
2006.
2006.
Right.
And it
Right.
was really well appreciated, and we got rave
Wow.
reviews and all. But we were in the middle of our semesters. We were, I think, in third semester,
Hmm.
and we came back, and then we realized that there's a lot more to be learned about fashion as a platform rather than just doing
Okay, someone
like
also wants to
being a
speak on the platform, I guess.
yeah, that's Lela.
Lena.
She-
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, the thing is that's so we didn't know that how the Indian fashion industry works and all, and we showcased the line thinking that okay, since this is a collection for spring summer next year, if we get any inquiries, we'd be able to produce, and that's why we had taught the craftsperson.
Hmm.
And funnily enough, we started getting calls from stores saying, "Oh, we came back on a Tuesday, and on they called us on a Wednesday, and they said we have a promo on Friday or Saturday. Please send us your garments." And we said we just have one piece. There's no production. And we realized that there's a lot about the business we need to learn before we actually launch our label. So this was way
Right.
back in 2006, and then we just went back
Start.
to being good students, finishing our semesters, doing our diploma as per
Okay.
the curriculum,
Right.
which in the continuing
Next step.
slides you will see.
Yeah.
And sorry, you had asked about Amrich. So we were thinking about a name for the label because when you apply for Gen Next, you need to have a label name.
Yeah.
And sitting in NID, we had, I mean, NID as a culture is such that you discuss with friends different disciplines, this, that, and the other. And they asked us what exactly drives you guys, and we said we really like the richness of hand done products. And I think
Okay.
that's where it came. There were options of Amiri, there were options of, and funnily enough, Amiri, if we had taken a more Indian
Hmm.
sounding name uh, means means the same thing as Amrich in English.
Okay.
Like it
Okay.
talks about luxury. And
Ah.
Amiri also would have worked for us as Amit and Richard, and Amrich also works for us as Amit and Richard. So uh, it was something that really worked for us. It sounded cool. And
Yeah.
earlier it was more about the name being for the product saying I am rich, and we had
Okay.
thought we'll call the label I Am Rich, but then thanks to the better judgment and listening to friends, we dropped the I, and
Right.
we stuck to Am Rich. So that's where the name was born from.
Interesting. Quite interesting. I always thought it is because of Amit and Richard, so that's why you had
It works. I think it's good recall value for people to remember who.
Yeah. Right, right. So
So
next you were talking about your diploma project and how you
yeah.
came up with everything. So in the
So
next slide,
as yeah,
yeah.
so this was for this collection. We had again applied for the Student Designers of the Year, which is by the Clothing Manufacturers Association of India, and we won the best student designers. This was the first time they ever gave the award to a duo. So in a
Wow.
lot of ways, we've done a lot of firsts as duos, winning awards and getting selected for events. So I think it worked. The team worked, and for us, that
Quite
was
well.
the biggest, I think, win
Achieved.
because today
Yeah.
also I think Amrich is what it is because of the two minds that work together, and
Right,
that's what
right.
gives out the product that is there. So apart from the craftspeople and the craftsmen that go into creating all the beauty, there are two minds that work overtime to put that to
Yeah,
use.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, because when we see as designers and we are talking about designers and two minds of designers working together, I think it really creates a beautiful art, and I would say functional art, which anybody can adore and it's unique. So, as designers, what do you think? What inspired you? Like when you were talking about in the next slide, we can see, Swati. Yeah. So, what really inspired you from your experiences as
So
designer?
basically, once we finished our Gen X program, we realized that okay, in the future we will work together. So why don't not take projects and things where we both can be working together so that it builds on the portfolio for Amrich rather than as individuals. So
Right.
there's a store called Satyam in Jaipur that was looking for a
Yeah.
textile and an apparel designer. They basically work. They have a sister concern called Rajasthan Fabrics and Arts, and
Yeah.
they're an antique shop. So Satyam is basically an offshoot of that, and they create contemporary versions of antiques
Okay.
inspired by the antiques. And
Right.
the projects for both of us were very interesting. Richard's project, he'll tell you about. Mine was more to study Shahi Beggar block printing, come up
Okay.
with newer blocks, and do a range of
Hmm.
saris and scarves. That was my primary project, which was exciting because both of us love Jaipur as a city.
Hmm.
So for
I
us,
know.
8 months in Jaipur was like divine.
Yeah. So, Richard, what was your experience?
So, like during the our graduation project, my brief was basically to look at their vast old costumes repertoire and come up with interesting silhouettes and shapes for their international clients, because
Okay.
Jaipur being a tourist hub and a lot of international shops and clients come there, so they mainly cater to the international tourists. So my main brief was to study the old costumes and come up with shapes and silhouettes which cater to the international people. So that
Okay.
was the thing. And one of the interesting part about our project was the hand stitching they do in the shop.
Yeah.
They done like the olden times. They are fully hand stitched. no
Right. Right.
machine no machine is used
That's like
anywhere.
In the construction,
crafted
yeah.
Yeah.
luxury. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was one of our first introduction to like old
Lux.
lux, yeah, old handmade luxury.
Right.
So it was
So,
interesting.
uh,
Yeah, tell me.
so when you studied silhouettes and everything in NID and all, and then when you came to the real grounds of working, like yes, over here you could see in the next, yeah, over here. So, what do you think was what? How did you evolve as a designer in terms of silhouettes, in terms of everything? How did it come up with? How much
So
price and all?
so I think when you are a student, you have time. I think you have the luxury of time. You can
Right.
do your research, you can do your uh, explorations and all that stuff at your own time and leisure. But when you're working in an organization, it's everything revolves around the client, and
Hmm.
the time period is very important, because everything works according to season, like summer,
Hmm.
winter. So you if
Time bound.
it's very time bound, and it's time is very important, and whatever you
Yeah.
do, you need to be sure, because you're basically exploring or doing all the combination and permutations on somebody else's uh, how do you put it,
Money.
money.
Let's be direct.
So
It's the money
yeah,
which you're doing.
yeah, so you need to be responsible about what you are doing. At the
Hmm.
same time, you need to be sure what you're doing. So I think that is very important when you are working for somebody. Time is very important, and
Yeah. Even the
understanding
quality, yeah,
even yeah,
understanding. Yeah,
understanding your client is another factor which I think is super important.
right, right, right. And so when you started working, if you can see the next slide, if you when you started working, what really inspired you in the sense of silhouettes, in terms of like how did you come up with designs? What was the process that you followed at that time?
I think I think the way NID teaches us, you take a basic shape and you keep adding and subtracting things on it.
Yeah.
So, and understanding, because my my client was a foreign personnel, so it's, I think, understanding what they like and where they'll wear a particular garment. So I think that was the main
Focus. Yeah,
focus.
so you actually interacted with the clients while you were there, and you understand
Yes,
so they
yes.
their way of thinking and all.
So Satyam actually is a very small firm. It's a
Was at least.
it's a family led
Yeah.
company or a firm. So our workstation was on the floor of the shop. We used to
Okay.
sit on the floor. So and
Interesting.
whenever yeah, it was so basically the shop was our studio come office space come whatever you call it. So whenever a
Right.
client you so whenever a
Mm.
client used to walk in, definitely we used to get chance to interact. If not interact, we at least used to see and understand what they are liking in the shop and
Mm.
how they are reacting to a particular detail or a particular silhouette, so or a textile color. So I think yes, a client
Feedback, yeah.
And
feedback did help
and
us.
what was their reaction towards the money? Because being a luxury and Satyam, I guess, is quite expensive also in that form. Of course, it's not expensive as per
So
detailing which they put, but client's
no,
reaction?
but to be honest, when we used to work there, so like a hand-stitched khadi 300 count shirt, they would retail it at around 5,000 rupees. I'm talking about
Right.
2007 probably.
Okay. Okay.
And at that time, it used to us to look like, oh my God, because of course we were students on a stipend for a diploma. We were like, that's really expensive. I don't think we can afford that. But today, when we're in the
Yeah.
business of, I mean, a similar business, we realize that those products were really undervalued. I
Hmm.
mean, at that time also, if you converted to dollars, it used to work down to I think under $100 probably. So for
Okay.
the foreigners, especially like Europeans and Americans at that time, and at that time the economy also wasn't in such a bad state. So
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
used to
Hmm.
really appreciate the
Textile.
textile, the finish, the fact that people have actually
Detailing.
taken
Hmm.
pain to create a garment by hand, and
Right.
price was never an issue for them. I mean, they
Okay.
would know that. In fact, Satyam as a store used to do production for quite a few big
International.
international companies like Dosa and uh,
Bamford and Son.
Bamford and Sons and stuff like that. So, I mean,
Okay.
that's like doing production, and then of course
Hmm.
markups keep happening and prices keep spiraling. So, there's an understanding and an appreciation for the Indian hand skill.
Right. 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 I think that is something very important which we already have as a treasure. So
Yeah.
can we have the next slide? Yeah, this is also, I guess, their work.
Yeah, so I think my other brief was doing saris, like because we were in Jaipur and uh, the client had like a big client for Indian wear. He wanted to
Hmm.
start small Indian line, but the gota what you see is real silver. It's
Right.
actual
Right.
silver, which and actual
Antique pieces.
and so basically studying their old gotapatti work and coming out with simple saris for Jaipur clientele. So this
Okay.
is
Yeah.
what you see.
Right. 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 Yeah, that's also very important. Yeah, so we are going to Sanganer now, and you saw a lot of interesting things in Sanganer.
So my project basically was about Chai Baker, primarily about Chai Baker printing. And
Hmm.
like mentioned earlier, I used to love surfaces, and my comfort zone is more graphic, more contemporary, and all. So for me, this was quite a challenge because understanding and studying traditional Indian block printing and
Hmm.
then breaking that apart to come up with something new because understanding layouts and figuring out layouts that traditionally used to be done and looking at their archives also. So it was quite an
So,
interesting project for me to see whether I had the capability to design traditional Indian textiles in that way.
so in that form, in the design process, if you see, you really went very in depth into the research part of it and to understand uh, the language of the whole craft and everything before coming up to something new, or it was just a very simple process.
It basically no, they had archives. I apologize that the slide doesn't have where Richards, because I think it should have had Richards archives also, where they have old costumes, which we
Okay.
got to actually, how do you say, interact with the costumes and looking at the
Uh,
construction of older pieces. And those were things that basically allowed us to see like what, like looking in books, of course, is fascinating, but looking at the product up
yeah.
close is something else altogether. So the process was
Yeah.
to understand the whole Bale Buta Jal, the placements,
Uh,
traditional, more contemporary, and you would see some freaky designs also in their collection of this thing. I think there must have been very creative uh, textile designers at that time in the good old days.
But
right.
Anuja,
Right.
you have to understand. I think traditionally these chai makers were mainly used by men,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and what he was designing was mainly for
Female clientele,
female
like
clientele.
primarily
Yeah.
for a female clientele, scarves and stoles, and
Huh.
some fabrics for which Richard could use and convert into garments.
Okay. Right. Right.
So,
So the whole
so
language
my,
changed.
yeah, so mine was
Mhm.
more study based and reviving of old Bhutas and Jals, which I thought would be more consistent to today's time. So going through their archives and selecting and then modifying them, playing very simply modifying them with scale, changing size and scale to
Right.
create newer, uh,
Pieces. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So can we see the next a little faster?
So this
Yeah.
is basically like
Converted.
scaling of old,
Right.
uh, I
Next.
mean, a lot of restoration
Yeah.
work to from their old blocks, and then
Yeah.
explorations with
Next.
even simple Lahiri blocks like the chevron, just playing
Yeah.
over. I mean, I think this is where the graphic design comes in, where people play
Yeah.
and
Your friend.
misprinting and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's what was exciting for me, because I used to sit with the block printer, and while the block printer would be doing production, I would fool around with blocks also to see what can be achieved and what can't be. So I
Right.
think the next few slides will show you a few of the scarves. These are like
Yeah.
trials on layouts as to what kind of layouts I would want to explore with.
Yeah. Next. This is your
So
final.
yeah, so this is like a small part of the
So
range
how
of
did you
scarves that.
decide upon the, sorry, how did you decide upon the fabrics and all that? I can see very different type of fabrics in this.
So
Did
primarily
you
there
pick?
were cottons. There were
Okay.
cottons, mill cottons, khadi, hand spun, hand woven cottons. There were silk cotton blends. These were all the scarves that they used to have in their store.
Okay.
So I had to play with the textiles that they already had in their store and
And
come up
giving
with,
them a
and
new
whichever
look.
textiles, yeah, which the
Hmm.
textiles which fascinated me, I could let them know and they would order more of those.
Okay.
So
Okay.
while during my studies, I would of course explore. I mean, during my research of the old textiles, I would also look at what all is there in the thing. And like Richard said, because uh, we had a good rapport with our sponsor also, and also we had a very good rapport with the people who used to walk into the store. So we used to get a lot of first-hand feedback
Mm-hmm.
from them as to how they react to what textile and what feels nice around the skin, what like
Yeah.
scarves. Those are the things that you would think of.
Mhm.
So
Okay. Next.
that's
Yeah.
also one of the scarf designs done with
Yeah.
masking, which
Interesting.
so and a few saris we wanted to explore with saris, because when Richard was doing his Gotapatti saris, I said I also want to try doing some. And the sponsor
Yeah.
was sweet
Different
enough to say,
exploration.
okay, let's explore. The printer didn't really have a table where he could print saris, but they came out quite well. I mean, and they were
Yeah.
quite a hit with the stores. So it
Interesting.
was interesting.
Yeah. The next.
So this post our diploma, and while we were doing our diploma documentation back in NIT, we had an opportunity to work with Khadi Gram Udyog along with a ex-NIT graduate, and
Mhm.
basically working with Khadi Gram Udyog using their waste stock to create garments.
Okay.
And the brief was that the garment, nothing could be above 200 rupees,
Like, yeah, the cost shouldn't be more than
like
200.
with detailing, stitching, and everything.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
because they
that's
wanted
quite
to sell those
challenging.
at, I think, 1,000 rupees.
Yeah, they wanted to sell it for maximum 500 to 800 to
Okay,
1,000 rupees. So that was the price range. So I think if you go to the next slide, uh,
next.
No, no, no. Yeah, okay.
yeah. So basically, after our graduation, we had worked from making garments for say 200 rupees. From there, we came to Delhi to work for a couture house called Ravison,
Wow.
and
Okay.
there we had to, we basically had to make like
Couture pieces.
couture
Yeah, like
pieces. Yeah,
luxury. This was
luxury.
So
premium
how was the
luxury.
whole difference? I mean, how did you really start thinking? On one side, you're talking about like 200, and then that would be at least minimum
So
2,000,
I
20,000 or so.
I think that's what as I don't know, as both of us had like were very clear that design is, I think, a way of doing things. It's basically client service. Client comes
Mhm.
first, so you
And
have
we
to
have
have to
to be
yeah. So
you have
you
to be
have to
creative to cater to
y-
both the things.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you have to understand your client, where the
Mm.
client is, and I think as a good designer, I think it doesn't make a difference whether you're making a garment for 200 rupees or
Mm.
20,000 rupees. If your design aesthetics and your design principles are in place, I think you
Mm.
can do both.
And I think another thing that it was interesting, and we did this a lot as a challenge also, because we wanted to see that we didn't want to uh, basically, whichever house you work for or whichever client you
Mm.
work for, you should understand their aesthetics and provide them with design driven intervention which works for their aesthetic, rather than
Right.
shoving your self into it. Or you should be, I think you should have the creativity and the passion to keep exploring and keep playing around with newer ideas and newer design sensibilities, so that
Yeah.
it doesn't stagnate you firstly, and secondly it allows you to explore a wider gamut.
Right. Right. So Amit and Richard, like after so much of exposure in the market and everything, and you understood so well about all these designs, and I can see a lot of things. How did Amrich then start? I think we can go to the next one where we have
Yeah.
Amrich. Yeah,
So
if you
while
can, we can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it. We always wanted to start something of our own, and it was just. I think we were comfortable doing consultancy for Ravison. We were quite comfortable, but I think from 6 months of our project, it went on
18 months.
18 months, and I think after 18 months we realized that we can't do any more.
No, as in, let me correct that. It was a 6 month consultancy.
Huh.
Okay.
Post that, and he comes from Ahmedabad. I originally came from Kolkata. Parents living in both diverse areas, and when both of us told our parents that we have a consultancy in Delhi, the answers I mean, the questions we got: why Delhi? Why Delhi as a city do you people want to go to? It's notorious. So we also didn't know whether we wanted to live in Delhi or not, and we thought 6 months किसी तरह तो जी लेंगे. So
Hmm.
let's do this, and that 6 months was really good, because the collection you see that we
Yeah.
presented to Ravison was the first 6 months, and then they just wouldn't want to let us go. They kept
Right.
extending another 6 months, another 6 months. I think in our dreams also we used to see Salma Sitara and all that. And we once decided, we said it's enough. We want to get back to cleansing our system, detoxifying and all, and coming back to what we believe in. And Amrich
Right.
basically started, you'll see in the next slide, it was a very spontaneous decision to, sorry, not this, it'll come a little ahead. I'll
Yeah.
talk about it then. It was a very spontaneous decision for us to just make a collection that we believe in and something
Right.
that we feel excited about. We went to the hills and shot on a friend and sent our lookbook out to 7 stores across the country in 2011. And
Okay.
out of 7 stores, 5 stores wrote back immediately saying, we'd love to stock your line. So we got super
Interesting.
excited, and that's where it started. And once it started, it's been a continuous role. So
So from 11 till now, it's been continuously.
yes, yes.
I can
So
see a lot of
so
exploration in terms with,
I
yeah,
would
sorry.
I would like to add here a little more about Amrich. If you go to the first slide,
Yeah.
so I think when we were starting Amrich again, I would say again because yeah. So I think if you see, these were the three lines which
Drove us.
drove us, and I think this would, you'll call this as an Amrich mantra. What
Right.
we wanted Amrich to be, and I think
I think like both of us, we believe in when we're presenting a textile on a garment also or any form. I think we both believe in the textile. The
Yeah.
silhouette and the shape comes later, so it's a very textile driven uh,
Brand.
design process in that
yeah.
sense. Like it's not like
Right.
Richard sits and sketches something and then we go figuring out textiles for it. It works the
Uh-huh.
other way where both of us get excited about certain textiles and or a certain look and feel. So we sit down together, and though he's professionally trained as a garment designer and I'm a textile designer, it's no longer that way. There are a lot of textiles that are designed by him today,
Right.
and a few silhouettes which I can suggest and dabble with, which come out through
I
my
think the whole
thought process.
passion came out with
Yeah,
explore
so for us,
passion.
these were the three things that really drove us, like the
Right.
simplicity, because you can overdo a lot of things and make something out of it, could be very beautiful, but we believe in it being simple and speaking. And
Right.
handmade, of course, I mean, nobody can really deny the beauty of something that is beautifully handmade, I would say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. True.
in that, and at the end of the day, I think we see fashion, we see a lot of clothing which is very uncomfortable, and
Hmm.
people don't seem to get that they are actually taxing themselves, paying high amounts of money and taxing themselves, and not letting their bodies breathe, not being able to eat,
True.
and all those things. And for us, it was our we were catering to an Indian clientele to begin with Amrich.
Right.
That was our target market. So weather is something that is very important that you have to take into
Hmm.
consideration. So the
Hmm. Hmm.
indulgence of comfort.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so the label stays true to that today also, that we design for women of all shapes and sizes from all walks of life.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
once you've worn an Amrich, I think you'll keep coming back to it.
That's interesting. So, if I see who is an Amrich woman, can you define that?
Uh, so I think women who are not really swayed by trends, and people who are not like just looking emptily at fashion glossies and looking at who's wearing what and so and so celebrity is wearing this, so I need to wear the same thing. Whether they're
Hmm.
women who are thinking women, they are in
Okay.
touch with their roots and their aesthetics are very well in place. They're confident
Okay.
women because they don't really need to have a loud label flaunting persona which needs to show what they're worth.
Okay.
And I think in whether they're homemakers or they're
Professional.
industry
Yeah.
driving women, they
Mm-hmm.
all the women we've met, they're all very impactful
Hmm.
personalities in their own right. So for us, that's important. I think there's no set definition for an average woman. It encompasses women in general and allows
Interesting.
them to be what they are. Be free to be what you are rather than just follow trends and blindly
Interesting.
just be somebody else. I think
Yeah.
individualism, yeah, it's important.
Interesting. Can we see the next one? I think now we would like to understand the process in Amrich as a brand, what you go through, and how do you really come up with designs and the process and all that?
So I think if you see from the first
Second.
presentation to this presentation, Shibori is something which both of us are passionate about. It's
Yeah,
something that
absolutely.
it's something which excites us even like at 12 o'clock in the night, because especially when a new collection is coming, there are times when I get up all of a sudden and say, we can try this, and we'll get this result. So I think that is one factor which has stayed constant in all our collections, and it has been there in our
I
uh,
think what he's trying to say is that a lot of the sampling, I mean, a lot, in fact, all the textile sampling is done by us, especially for the
Right.
shiboris. So it
So
allows
you do
us
it
to,
by your own hands, like
yes,
you do
yes.
everything.
Yeah, and
Oh,
today also the
interesting.
shibori that we do for production is done by women who have been trained by us in-house. So a lot of
Right.
the stitch resist that you see in today's collections and stuff like that, more current, those are all done in-house. And they've all
Okay.
been things which we have explored with and then passed on to our uh, shibori. I would call them our shibori master craftspeople. And they are the ones who take it forward for the production.
Okay. Okay. So when we are talking about shibori, so that is the fabric part of it. Then how would you really introduce the detailing, or what type of buttons and all that? So what type of conceptualization do you do there? How do you get inspired by the silhouettes and the detailing, all of that?
mm, I think the last line, indulgence of comfort,
Yeah.
I think that is one of the main how do I put it, focus when we design a silhouette or put detailing, because whatever we do or whatever we put in our silhouettes, I think comfort is very important.
Practicality,
Okay.
yeah.
Practicality, like I think 90% of our silhouettes have pockets, because I think women,
Deserve pockets.
yeah.
I agree. Actually, it is such
and
a common thing today. I understand.
and and I think because from the kind of textiles we work with, we don't like form fitting silhouettes, so our silhouettes are always away from the body. It
Right.
lets your body breathe. I think being being in India or being in Delhi, I think I cannot wear a polyester shirt in summer and feel
Absolutely.
fashionable. I need my
True.
200s count khadi shirt to let my body breathe in summer. So I think why should women need to wear anything other than the
Yeah,
finest
it's
of cottons
uh,
and uh,
right.
chanderis? And so I think those are few of the points which we keep in mind when we are designing our silhouettes. And our silhouettes mainly are derived from our Indian costumes and shapes.
Hmm.
So, and
Yeah.
I think the more
And
other
more
details
functional by
come,
nature. Right.
yeah, and the other details come seasonal, like for a particular season we'll do certain details. So yeah.
A lot of the details actually come out in the textiles. Like the garment on the right, if you see, it's
Hmm.
actually it's a Bengal woven muslin, and
Okay.
it's one of their traditional twisted thread extra weft design details that they do in their in as a selvage design,
Hmm.
which they put in. And we took it forward and we wanted to use it more interestingly to highlight, because that selvage is so beautiful, and usually when a garment is cut, you tend to cut off the selvage and throw it. So
Yeah.
what we wanted is we wanted to show off that as the element that is striking in the garment. So that's the
Yeah, you're
treatment
not
that we
killing
used.
the original
Yeah.
originality of a
Yeah.
fabric, basically, in the whole
So
thing.
for us,
That's
the
absolutely good.
textile is the hero that then gets supported by the silhouette.
So now if you
Yeah.
go down a couple of slides, I think you will see our
Yeah. Let's see
collections
more.
throughout. So if you want to ask
Beautiful.
something about something, you can.
I want to interestingly ask that how do you decide on the colors? Like you have vibrant colors on one side and very subtle colors on the, like, see, this one is such a beautiful subtle silhouette and color and everything, and on the other side you had those bright colors. So how do you really come up with the color schemes and things like that?
I think that also depends what we are
This
feeling
is
for a
bright.
season.
Okay.
Because we work in handloom, so we tend to start working or planning a collection a year in advance.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
for summer 21, planning and all has happened a year in advance. Of course, this year it didn't really take off because of everything that has
COVID,
happened.
right.
But
Yeah.
uh, generally, that's the route that is taken, and it depends on how we are feeling. Like we'll bounce
Mhm.
colors off each other. Like I'll tell him that I'm feeling very mustard yellow this time. I don't know why I keep seeing mustard yellow, and I keep getting attracted to it. And then if he happens to say yes, it is a nice color, then that color is frozen on. So
Wow.
that becomes a color for a particular season. That yes, this is, of course, our signature black and whites are always there. They are part of every
And I think you
collection.
play a lot with stripes and checks and
Yes. So see,
geometry.
the thing is with silhouettes, there is only so much that you can change to uh, still keep the interest of your consumer, because if you're comfortable in a certain shape, then you would
Mhm.
want to go back to that shape, and you know that it flatters you. So
Right.
you can play with textile, you can play with little details, and you can play with little changes like necklines, sleeves, hemlines, those kind of things. But overall, the basic silhouette has to stay. But having said that, I think one challenge for us every season is to adapt and play, take something that has been a classic earlier and give it an absolutely new and refreshing avatar.
So I
So
think
that
now at this stage, your silhouettes and the look of the whole brand is kind of freezed. Is that so, or you're just
It
experimenting?
changes. It changes. Again, that's
Okay.
something that what mood we're in and what textiles we're playing with. Like
Okay.
if you see, our spring summer lines are a lot more casual. They're a lot more free
Free.
flowing and relaxed. Whereas our fall
Yeah.
winter lines tend to get a little more formal. Formal, I
Okay.
would not say for formal wearing, but they become a little
Hmm.
more shaped.
Hmm.
Yeah, shaped, structured, because
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
start
Hmm.
using heavier silks, you use heavier constructions, you use woolens, you use a lot of textile layering that happens. So
Yeah.
in that case, there's always that very dual flow that happens. So it actually refreshes the palette for us also, because when we've gone through a very dark and structured fall winter, we tend to switch to a very
So
extremely
if you
relaxed.
go behind, if you go back,
Yeah.
so that's a spring summer,
Okay.
and come if you go ahead,
Hmm.
that's our autumn winter. So it was right one
Okay.
after the other, but you can see how the colors and the mood changes. So I
And I think
Right.
it comes naturally now
Yeah.
after all these years. And colors wise, we have some colors which are our favorites, and every season we try to experiment, because India as a market is very I mean, as many yellows and reds and pinks you make, they'll sell. So if you get stuck in that rut of just doing those colors, you will
Uh,
actually be stuck there. So we need to
okay.
experiment and we need to play. And black and white is something that we personally love, and
I think it's
we
yeah.
think in black and white
It's
and then add
beautiful.
color.
Right.
So
And I can see
it,
a lot of experiments with just simple forms and shapes. Right. Have you also tried something with natural dyes and natural
yeah.
colors?
So
What type
uh,
of dyes you use in this?
So I think in this collection, the block printing I think is
block printing is all
block print.
natural dye.
It's natural.
In
Okay.
fact,
Okay.
we've experimented with natural dyed. See, the thing is, the problem that happens is with natural dyed textiles, they tend to have a shelf life which creates a problem, because we work with retail partners across the country, and we
Okay.
don't control the lighting or the way a garment is presented. So if, say, we've had experiences where a garment has been on a dummy, and there's been a halogen put on one arm, and the color
Uh,
has faded when the garment has come to us saying this is a defect. But it's not
okay.
really, it's like harsh sunlight. When you say natural dyed garments shouldn't
Uh,
be left out in harsh light.
uh,
So things like that. So we do these very limited edition capsule collections of natural dyed textiles, And
Okay.
those are not the, we don't keep them as our mainstream collection. It's more inserts in between seasons and stuff to keep the interest alive. At the same time, it allows us to dabble with our natural dye cravings. But a lot of indigo and a lot
Go
of
ahead, Mo.
yeah,
Yeah. Next slide. Yeah.
So these are just like few of
just
the,
some visuals, yeah,
yeah.
to give you an idea
Right.
of the kind of textiles.
Hmm.
Again, like stripes and checks you had mentioned. So the image on the left is a hand woven cotton textile with stripes
Right.
and checks, and then playing in construction with the stripes and checks to create interesting patterns, like manipulation of the sleeve with pleats gives you that
Yeah.
form. And on the right,
Very
what you see,
inspiring.
yeah,
Yeah.
on the right, what you see is an engineered shibori piece where the textile is created specifically for this garment and this treatment. And
Right. Right.
then, due to the pleating and all, you get this very, how would I say it, like
Interesting.
a mala kind of an effect, which happens,
Uh,
but it's not.
a jewelry
It,
piece, you can say, in a
yeah,
manner.
yeah. So it's something that is thought of in those terms when we're designing the textile, that this we could treat it in this way. And once the
Right.
textile comes to you, then you can explore in a whole lot of mannerisms to create garments.
Right. 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 I think that's quite interesting. And do you also use like when you're creating these patterns on fabric, like the shibori and all that? Do you also think about what pattern has to be created first in the shibori and then create the garment, or is it the vice versa?
No, it's 99% of the time it's the textile that is designed first.
I
So
think
Okay.
I think the shape, I think the textile calls for the shape.
So you
Like,
mean to say that you drape a lot of these garments afterwards? Is it like that?
uh,
Or you make
mm,
patterns also?
not yeah, it's more pattern driven, but
Okay.
basically the textiles are created first. So
Okay.
it doesn't have to do with what we're thinking in terms of shape and form and things like that. Like if you go back one slide,
Yeah.
you'll see a variety. This was a collection that was inspired by the style of chiaroscuro, where
Okay.
playing of light and shadow, and we wanted
Hmm.
to translate that to textile. We hadn't thought of how we are going to use it in garments.
Hmm.
And like you can see the fade in, fade outs in the Tajime Shibori, the patterning, the way the fabric is folded and then stitch resist is done
Okay.
in the like if you see the garment of the model standing right next to Richard in the
Yeah. Yeah.
center, so
Right.
that's like the
Yeah.
garment, the textile is created like that, and then to display the textile to its best, the
Huh.
garment is cut in that shape.
Yeah, I think it's an exploration of art on body which you're actually creating. Textile
I
art
I
on
guess
body.
I guess when we
Yeah.
think of it, yeah, it works that way, but we don't price our garments to the price of art pieces, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, that
Yeah,
is
but
very
it is wearable art. It's basically pieces that people, we never want people to throw away the garments. It's always
Mhm.
something that you would cherish and wear, and you'd be comfortable to pull out of your wardrobe maybe 5 years down the line or 10 years down
Right.
the line, and still be comfortable to wear it.
Yeah.
And
Until unless you become fat, that's a different thing.
well, there's enough room for a little growth, but everybody should stay healthy also.
Yeah. So we will take the questions in the end. I think many people have a lot of questions here, and we will definitely cater to all the questions. So I also wanted to ask about how do you think Amrich is sustainable? Do you think that Amrich is a sustainable brand in itself? And what do you think is the future as sustainability? Because that's quite an important topic.
Well, we personally don't
call
call
us
ourselves a sustainable
sustainable.
brand. We call ourselves a very conscious brand. I think
Okay.
sustainability is a term which is a misnomer if anybody is in fashion, firstly, because
Okay.
fashion per se, as fashion is, needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's not fashion. I mean,
Yeah, it needs
basically,
to
I mean,
evolve all the
technically,
time.
yeah. So
Yeah.
if you're saying that you're sustainable, then it has to be about slow clothing.
Right.
It needs, and that also is not technically sustainable. It's more being conscious about that, that you don't, we also personally believe in, you buy less, but you buy right. You buy things that you love and
Absolutely.
absolutely cherish, because you'll wear it more. You'll wear it
Right.
again and again, and you'll take good care of those pieces. Like,
True.
even if I use the most ecologically sound processes in development of my textiles and my garments, but if I treat them badly and wear them twice and throw them, that's not sustainable. So
I agree. I
it
totally
defeats
agree.
the purpose.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And in fact, one of the points which, in terms of sustainability, as designers, and you work with a lot of artisans, weavers, I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of handcrafted fabrics being created, woven surfaces which you create. So, how do you think, as a designer's responsibility is towards artisans and crafts of this country?
We basically, I mean, we absolutely, I don't think we need to say it more, but
Wow.
we absolutely cherish and adore the crafts that this country has. And we wouldn't have been the brand that we are today if we weren't placed in India.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that. And at the same time, we also have to acknowledge that each and every craftsperson that is working out there is doing it for two things. One is his passion, and the second
Yeah.
is to make a living.
Right.
Today,
Right.
what's happened in the earlier ages, it used to be the patronage of royalty and rich consumers that used to allow them to be creative. Today, with a commercial bent of mind, there a lot of craftspeople have tended to go that way, where जो बिक रहा है वो बनाओ,
Hmm.
whether
Hmm.
it's trash, whether it's not
Yeah,
this
I
thing. So
totally agree.
for us, it's very important that the people that we work with are open to exploring and trying out new things.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's a challenge to get them to do that, because of course you're trying to ask them to break away from their steady income and explore on something which they are not at that time sure whether it'll work or not. For us,
Hmm.
it's important to keep reinventing the textiles, because that's something that excites us and excites
Right.
the consumer. And once the craftsperson has done that, they will also understand that they've been doing something for, say, hundreds of years or quite a few generations, and they've never thought that tweaking it maybe a little bit
Hmm.
could
Hmm. Hmm.
change the outcome and give you something new. So it's not something
True.
that goes away from their vocabulary or their comfort level, but it's just
Yeah.
something that they've not thought of. So we become more like tools. We use design as tools to
Hmm.
engage them and bring their product to the end consumer. And we basically, Amrich, the people that we work with, we've been working with since we've started, and
Hmm.
that family keeps growing every time we meet craftspeople who are exciting to work with. And
Yeah.
we you have to be responsible towards them. We make sure that everybody is happy in what they're doing and in creating. And you won't believe it, if we don't send in our designs or sampling requests, we start getting calls from them saying, आपका sampling का कुछ आया नहीं, क्या हो गया, कुछ सब ठीक है.
हाँ.
And so
हाँ.
that makes us feel nice that they're actually looking forward to, there's something new coming, so there's something new to be excited about.
Interesting.
So that drives
Yeah.
us also.
Yeah, I think that's a very important part, to connect to the families of the artisans. So,
Yeah.
if you have to give a message to the new generation which is there, what would that be? Since you have
Uh,
experience with the new generation also.
I think for the new generation, I think it's, if there's one thing that you might have seen through the work that we've done, it comes out of passion. If you
Yeah.
don't have the passion for it, don't get into it. Unless you just want to be a mule in the design industry to convert people's work, which
Yeah.
also there is a need for. But if you want to create, you have to have an identity of your own. You have to have
Right.
that drive to go through go through enormous, like whenever you see fashion and when you see this slideshow also, you will see, oh, it's all very beautiful and all very hunky dory. There's
Yeah.
a lot of pain and trouble and toil that goes through it, and that that is what makes it more exciting when you see these slides,
Hmm,
because
hmm,
you've
hmm.
gone through all of those efforts, you've made the effort to come out of it and still present a collection which is, and it's not just us, I mean in general the fashion industry, designers all over, it's not all
Yeah,
glamour. There's a
right.
lot of hard work and there's a lot of donkey work that goes into putting out that one garment for people to look at and review. So
Yeah,
follow your dreams and be honest to them. I think that's something that is very important.
yeah,
And use design more as a tool to connect rather than to isolate. I
true.
think that is also very important.
I agree totally. You've said very meaningful things actually. So, one last question: what do you
Yeah.
see yourself post COVID? How has it impacted your brand, and what do you see the future of it now?
I
It's
think we no comment no comments.
no, I think you can't be you. I mean, nobody in their wildest imagination had probably thought of this being such a big
True.
disaster for so many people all over the world. And
Yeah,
usually, when something happens somewhere, there's a war somewhere, there's an infection, there's an outbreak, it's usually country related or something. So you tend to go by and do your own thing and live your own life. Here, the entire human race is affected. And
true.
there is no, we don't know whether what is the future. But
Hmm,
at the same time, you have to keep yourselves happy creating, which we've been
true.
doing, and be positive in those terms and not be positive with a
I know
report.
it's such a big thing now. Positive is also a very dangerous thing
Yeah,
because yeah, so it was very interesting. I have certain people interested asking certain questions. I'll go to that.
sure.
One is that how do you price your garments? So can you
So
tell me?
there's a very technical cost based pricing system. It's not about that this garment can sell for a lakh, let's put it at a lakh.
Okay,
It's there's a formula that goes into the construction of the garment, the amount of man hours made, the textile cost. Textiles is something that when we, because we work and we ask our artisans to keep innovating and keep trying out new things, we don't haggle on prices of those.
okay,
So
right.
when we are
So it's
sampling,
a
we
fair
go,
pricing.
yeah,
Yeah.
when we are sampling, we go wild with our ideas and we do sampling, and then we see whether it would work in a production scenario at a
Hmm, hmm,
retail price point. Would the textile sell?
hmm,
And
hmm.
if it doesn't, then it gets scrapped. It becomes our one-off sample pieces, which the artisan gets paid for, of course. But
Okay,
it or we do a that could be like a couture piece, and then we pret it down and do a pret version of that textile, and that
okay,
gets converted to production. So
okay.
those are things that it
Hmm.
it it kind of drives us towards the costing, because the textiles are expensive. Hand loom and hand woven and handcrafted is no longer cheap, and I think
Hmm.
people should
True.
get that out of their heads, that that is I mean, since it's hand done, it should be cheap, or because it's made in India, it should be cheap, because that's no
No, in
longer
fact,
true.
it is opposite because when it is hand done, there's a lot of processes gone
Of
into it.
course, but
Requires a lot of
there's a lack of understanding from the end of, I mean, not today, but when we had started out, there was a lack of understanding of consumers and customers. Today,
Mhm.
sustainability, handmade, and all is the buzzword that people want, and all the
True.
stories that are put out about how things are created and how things are made. So that's
Yeah,
made people aware. But
right.
pricing is done some according to a product, like
Yeah, a cost
it's
sheet.
a
It's
cost sheet.
proper cost sheet.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, okay. But approximately, if you see, what is your starting range for
So,
I think five
5,000?
to it goes to around 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little more, maybe a little more less. Right, right. That's interesting. So, where did you learn Shibori? I think it was from NID.
no.
Uh, okay, where? I only remember you experimenting so much in the lab. So,
So the weird thing was that I think during my graphic design days, I used to do graphic design for a studio called Weaver Studio in Kolkata. And
Okay.
they were one of the pioneers who had brought in shibori into the country. They had sent craftspeople to learn. I mean, they had sent their
Okay.
designers to learn from the master shibori artisans in Japan. And they
Okay.
wanted to do an event, and I was asked to do the graphics for it, the brochures and the invites and all. And I had no head, no tail about what the hell shibori is. It sounded really alien to me. And
Okay.
then I was told that it's just by one of my friends who worked there said that it's a fancier name for Indian tie dye. हमारी बांधनी होती है ना वैसा ही है सिर्फ थोड़ा उसको fancy कर दिया है. Of course, when at that time I didn't have any books to go through or anything, but I started exploring with tie dye, got totally hooked onto it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I did the shibori. Uh, the entire event, the Shibori event for them, and then I started exploring more. I just went crazy, and it was actually a period of time when I was absolutely insane practicing Shibori. I didn't call it Shibori; I used to call it tie dye, but now I know
Okay.
that it's closer to the Japanese art form than the Indian bandhani.
Interesting. I think we'll just take the last question since we are over time. What is the customer percentage? Meaning, what do you say? I mean, how many Indian buyers and international buyers do you have, and how people in India react to your brand aesthetics?
Percentage, as in, is this a question from somebody who's
Yeah.
into statistics and all those things? Because we're very bad with that. We
Oh no,
have enough
it
of
is
a
from a
percentage.
designer.
We have enough of a percentage of clientele that we've survived in this difficult industry for 9 years, and we flourished
Wow.
without. Honestly, for the first 5 years of our business, we did not really have to engage with any PR. We did not have to do any fashion weeks, but we kept growing. For the first season, we had thought that we want to be just in 5 stores. For the first year, we had thought that we want to be in 5 stores across the country. In 6 months' time, we were in 30 stores across the country by word of mouth. So
Okay.
we've realized that the product that we're putting out there, and when we say that the product speaks and says, I am rich, stands true to what we believe in, because we've never really had to be a loud fashion or clothing brand, but we've
Yeah.
been blessed to have been appreciated.
So say 90% Indian clientele and 10% international.
Good. Nice. Very interesting. Good. I think there's one more question, but I guess we have already much more or less. So, how do you explain or justify your product pricing? I think we have covered that, and it's more and more when we go in depth, we will understand that. So, yes, I guess it is a very beautiful conversation, and I don't feel like ending it, but because of the time constraints, we have to. But yes, it was a very, very meaningful conversation, and I would like to
It's
thank
been
on
a
behalf
pleasure.
of IICD, the team which has also helped me behind creating this whole Vaarta session. And I would like to see you more often at IICD, giving
Yeah.
more inputs to
Virtually
here.
or
I really hope it is on offline and in the campus because we
yeah.
also want to go back. But I guess till that time, we will involve you virtually.
Sure.
Sure.
It'll be our pleasure. It'll be our
Yes,
pleasure.
and thank you so much for sharing such amazing details. I hope it's really inspired many students and people here.
Hopes.
Yes, I guess thank you so much.
Thank
And
Our
you.
pleasure. Thank
we'll
you
see you
for
again soon.
joining.
Thank you,
Yes,
everybody.
Thank you. All the best.
thank